a number of other individuals who are standing here, and county, city council persons who are here, Councilmember Gallegos and Councilmember Jackson who are here, and people from LULAC, Mary Ramos, and who I have, Gracie Science, Al, present, Lima Labashawan, I'm going to get that last name yet, but Sima, Cesar Espinoza from Field, Mark Finkenstein from the Anti-Defamation League, Angela Bartholomew, co-chair of our Advocacy and Policy Committee of the Black Chamber, Bobby Singh, business person and on the board of Houston Furs, Michael Heckerman, the CEO of Houston Furs, who am I leaving out? Lenora Pullman, a business person and political activist, community activist, just a number of individuals who are standing with us. I was just having a conversation, Judge, with Gracie and Al, and we were saying, you know, how many times do we have to continue to fight these battles just for basic fundamental democratic rights? The right to vote, access to the right to vote. How many times? Karen Padman from Metro, certainly don't want to leave her out. Karen from Metro, head of the chair of the board. But you know, how many times? And I remember my days in the legislature when I would be on the in committee, and issues would come up about investing in institutions of color and fighting for MWB participation. And there was one time when I was in committee, when I was in the legislature, and I said to myself while those issues were being discussed, I said, I just don't feel like fighting this battle today. And really, I sat there and I said, today I just don't feel like talking about issues that should have been done. And we've discussed these issues year after year after year after year. And I said, when I was on the committee, I said, you know, to myself, not this morning. I'm gonna leave it up to somebody else. I'm just not gonna participate in this battle this morning. And I sat there, and the debate went on, the conversation went on, and I kept talking to myself, not this morning, Sylvester. Let somebody else do it. Let somebody else do it. I don't feel like doing it today. And then after going back and forth, I said to myself, you are here for such a time as this. And even though you may be tired of talking about it, you still have an obligation to participate. And I said to myself, Sylvester, you don't have the right to stand down when people are being deprived, when institutions, for example, of color are being deprived, being denied, whether you like it or not, okay, whether you like it or not, this is the moment that you find yourself here, and this is the time that you must stand up and say something. Well, quite frankly, that's how I feel right now. I don't think any of us on this stage get up every morning saying, Bobby, we want to talk about voter access or voter suppression or voter intimidation. I don't think any one of us get up in the morning saying that's what we want to do. But the reality is, if we don't stand up and speak out, then we must hold ourselves accountable for what ultimately ends up happening. And so today I'm honored to be standing here with Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo. Today we have many others who are standing as well. I do want to acknowledge the NAACP, LULAC, the Anti-Defamation League, Carmen Pamela again, Bobby Singh, so many others for standing here. Voting rights should not be a partisan issue. And it wasn't when President LBJ, a Texan, passed the Voting Rights Act in 1965, or when President George W. Bush, another Texan, reauthorized it during his presidency. But today, some in Texas are trying to turn back the clock and make it harder for people of color, the disabled, working families to cast that ballot. And let me tell you something. When Fannie Lou Hamer drove miles to register to vote, and when she got back and was beaten because she was registering people to vote, that was then. Okay, that was back then, 50 years ago. But we're still fighting for access to the voting booth today, 50 years later. And in the Texas legislature, there are these bills, House Bill 6, Senate Bill 7, that would deny, restrict access to the voting booth, literally would allow people to go around partisan poll watchers, video people while they are voting, with the intent of intimidating people while they are actually voting. In 2021, restricting the number of voting machines, restricting the number of voting locations, and then in Harris County. And Judge, I commend everything that you all did in making it easy for working men and working women to go to the polls and vote. Bills that would pull back on measures that would make voting more accessible. We're fighting those deals right now. And so I'm proud of business coalitions across the country and here in Texas that are waking up to what is happening and collectively denouncing the two restrictive voting bills being considered in the Texas legislature. And yesterday, the group Fair Election Texans wrote a letter opposing changes that would restrict access to the ballot box for eligible voters. The group of 175 executives from Houston, thank you, Karen Patman and so many others for instigating that letter to the Texas House Speaker, criticizing the proposed legislation and called the bills what they are, voter suppression. The letter included about a dozen members of the Greater Houston Partnership who said they could no longer remain silent, while the largest business organization, unfortunately in the city of Houston, refused to take a stand. And they stated in the letter these provisions, among others, will inevitably damage our competitiveness in attracting businesses and workers in Houston. And regardless of where people stand, it is important for us to recognize the economic impact of voter suppression. Earlier today, and I know recently, economist Ray Perriman spoke before the Harris County Commissioner's Court. This morning, he spoke before the Houston City Council and talked about the economic impact of these bills that are navigating through the Texas legislature will have on our economy, and specifically talked about the loss of jobs and the economic impact on the city of Houston in terms of consumer spending, earning, tourism, and economic development. And so these things are real. And I want to be very, very clear, because I've seen letters, even from the Greater Houston Partnership, describing these bills as partisan. There is nothing partisan in voter suppression. So let me just speak specifically to that. When there are bills that engage in voter suppression, voting intimidation, restricting access to the polling place, that's not partisan. That's just downright wrong. There's nothing partisan in voter suppression. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, you can still hold your party affiliation. But voter intimidation, voter suppression is not partisan. It is just wrong. And we should acknowledge it for what it is. I want to thank the business community for stepping up, but I wish more would step up as well, now and not after the bill passed, because it's now when we need people to stand up and not afterwards. You know, Judge, since I've been mayor, I think, 5 consecutive years, I've spoken, given the state of the city before the Greater Houston Partnership. We're going to make a change this year. And I've asked Michael Heckman and Houston First to partner with me and to serve as the host for the state of the city. I just think it's important this year for me to find that venue that better reflects the diversity of our city and the values that we hold so dear. So, look, this is Bishop Dixon, good to see you. This is one of those defining moments. And years from now, I think people will ask, where were you at this defining moment? Where were you, and what did you do, or what did you say? And I just want to be on the right side of history. I just want to be on the right side of history. And I want to do it not just for myself, but I want to do it for Cesor's son, that little kid. And I want him to know that the Houston in which I presently govern, that the doors are open to everyone. And the right to vote for every eligible person is one that they should have. And we're going to do everything we can to fight to keep those doors open, to make sure the voting is accessible, and that people are not intimidated. Because that intimidation, quite frankly, that intimidation is geared for communities of color and those who are disabled. So let me yield to County Judge Lina Hidalgo.
Thank you, Mayor Turner, for your leadership on this and so many issues, and everybody who's here. Thank you to all of you. We're here to talk about the future of democracy in Texas and to stand up with all of those here, not here, who are willing to fight for it. There are a lot of important issues that Americans can feel strongly about, that Americans can disagree on. Taxes, what the minimum wage should be, transportation policy. But democracy itself should never be on that list. And right now, I'm watching in horror as some are trying to make democracy itself a wedge issue. We can't let that happen. Over the past several weeks, our community has banded together against the voter suppression bills. Under the guise of election integrity, these bills are trying to usher in a new era of Jim Crow, attacking drive-through voting, our ability to allocate polling locations and have short lines, our ability to inform voters on how to vote by mail. They empower so-called poll watchers to harass voters, to record voters as they cast their vote. Groups as diverse and nonpartisan as the Anti-Defamation League, the Houston Food Bank, the Local Elections in America Project at Rice University, the Texas Alliance for Retired Americans, just to name a few. 10 leaders of the Greater Houston Partnership. Just yesterday, a group of major corporations, including American Airlines, Microsoft, HP, Levi Strauss, joined the fight. This is in addition to many other organizations and leaders, nonpartisan leaders and businesses. Despite this broad-based opposition to the attacks on voting rights, there's a group sticking out like a sore thumb for failing to speak up at a time of enormous consequence. Right now, voting rights are falling like dominoes in states across the country, from Georgia to Arizona to right here in Texas. And yet, the largest chamber of commerce in the Houston area is silent. An organization that states they support a diverse 21st century economy and opportunity for all, that committed to address racial equity and injustice after the murder of George Floyd. The blunt truth is you can't stand for that and at the same time be silent on voter suppression. When the right to vote is at the core of all of those rights. Our diversity and rights should be protected, not commodified for a brochure. We live in a time that demands action, not just lip service. These bills attack Harris County specifically. They single out the people of my county, my constituents, and the community that the Greater Houston Partnership is supposed to help thrive. It's no secret that these bills are designed to attack the policies we pioneered in Harris County, innovations that voters of both parties loved and championed. Our most used drive-through voting location this past election last week was in Kingwood, an area that votes overwhelmingly Republican. While no Harris County leader worth their salt should stay neutral during times of injustice, no Harris County leader, period, should stay silent as Harris County is attacked. It's worth noting there's another kind of voter suppression happening here beyond what's being proposed at the legislature. It's come to light in the press that when asked by business leaders, members of their own board, to consider taking a position on voter suppression, the Greater Houston Partnership refused to even take a vote. The irony of the refusal to take a vote on voter suppression, lest the membership come out in favor of protecting the vote, is not lost on me. Which brings me to why we're here today. Every year, Mayor Turner and I give our State of the County and State of the City address. They're each marquee events before the leadership of the Greater Houston Partnership and its membership. They're events that put the partnership front and center. Not this year. We can't, in good conscience, stand at the dais of the partnership when their will to represent their members and their community so easily crumbles in a time of need. We do not feel comfortable elevating them after seeing them shrink from the civil rights fight of our time, after seeing them not even allow consideration of whether to speak up in this fight. That is why we will forgo this year's State of the County and State of the City address at the partnership. Instead, we'll identify an alternate forum. The mayor has identified Houston First. I will announce details at a later time. I want to be clear. This is not about criticizing our business community as a whole. On the contrary, our business community is the engine of Harris County and Houston. They step up in times of need. Many of them are stepping up right now, speaking up against these bills because they recognize it's not just wrong to suppress the vote, it's also bad for business. Voter suppression could cost Texas tens of billions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of jobs. Texas has a history of racist voter suppression. We all know that. From poll taxes to placing poll sites next to jails, these bills are no different. But it's not too late. The leadership of the Greater Houston Partnership can still allow their board to vote on this important issue and perhaps take a stand. Elected officials in Austin can still do the right thing and stop these un-American bills from passing. People across our county can still make their voices heard by engaging their elected officials, choosing wisely where they spend their dollars. We can stop voter suppression. We can stop that domino from falling here in Texas. But we need everyone to find that courage and speak out, particularly the leaders of the community that is under attack. It is time to stand up. Thank you. I'll repeat briefly in Spanish. Estamos aquí para hablar acerca del futuro de la democracia en Texas y para apoyar a todos aquellos que están dispuestos a luchar por ella. Hay muchos temas importantes en los cuales diferimos. Las políticas de impuestos, el salario mínimo, la política de transporte, hay diferencias de opinión, muchas veces basado en partido. Pero la democracia en sí jamás debe ser un tema en discusión. Estoy observando con horror cómo algunos están intentando convertir la propia democracia en un tema divisivo. No podemos permitir que eso suceda. A través de las últimas semanas, muchos en la comunidad han trabajado por oponerse a las leyes que están intentando pasar en Austin. Leyes de que bajo la apariencia de integridad electoral marcan el comienzo de una nueva era de Jim Crow, que nos crearían largas líneas en las casillas de votación, que no nos permitirían informar al público acerca del voto por correo, que permitirían a las personas filmar a los votantes cuando estén votando. Grupos tan diversos y bipartidistas como el Houston Food Bank, la Liga Antidefamación, el Proyecto de Elecciones Locales en la Universidad de Rice, la Alianza de Jubilados Estadounidenses y muchos líderes de negocios han hablado en oposición a estos proyectos de ley anti-votante. Aunque hay muchas luchas, muchos individuos y negocios, compañías enormes oponiéndose a lo que está sucediendo en este momento. Justo ayer, American Airlines, Microsoft, HP, otras corporaciones enormes se unieron a la oposición contra estos proyectos de ley. Hay un grupo que notablemente no está protegiendo a nuestros votantes, a nuestra democracia, a nuestra región, durante una época de enormes consecuencias. En este momento están cayendo como dominós los estados, los derechos al voto, en Georgia, en Arizona, en la Florida, ahora aquí en Texas. Pero la Cámara de Comercio más grande del condado de Harris, que afirma apoyar una economía diversa, afirma la oportunidad para todos, que se comprometió para atacar el racismo y la injusticia después del asesinato de George Floyd, guarda silencio. No puedes apoyar todo eso y también guardar silencio en la opresión del voto. Vivimos en un tiempo que requiere fuerza, requiere coraje, requiere lucha. Estos ataques, estos proyectos de ley, atacan el condado Harris específicamente. Todos nosotros, las personas que vivimos en este condado y las personas que el Greater Houston Partnership debe apoyar. Ningún líder legítimo del condado debería permanecer imparcial en tiempos de injusticia. Ningún líder del condado Harris, debe permanecer en silencio mientras que nuestro condado está bajo ataque. También hay que recordar que, como ha salido en la prensa, la organización no está permitiendo siquiera un voto en el tema, ni siquiera están permitiendo una discusión donde pueda haber la oportunidad de que el liderazgo decida oponerse a estos proyectos de ley. La ironía de que no opten a tomar un voto sobre la supresión de votantes es evidente. Y por eso estamos aquí hoy. Todos los años el alcalde y yo damos un discurso importante frente a la Cámara, al Greater Houston Partnership. Es un discurso que habla de nuestros proyectos ese año y eleva a la Cámara de Comercio. Este año no nos sentimos cómodos uniéndonos a su liderazgo y hablando en su estrado, cuando su voluntad de representar a sus miembros y a su condado se descompone en cuanto llega el momento de defender nuestros intereses. Es por eso que este año no llevaremos a cabo el discurso en frente de la Cámara de Comercio del Greater Houston Partnership. Encontraremos otra sede para el discurso. Quiero ser clara, no estoy criticando nuestra comunidad de negocios en sí. Muchísimos líderes de negocios, de industria, han salido en oposición a estas leyes, a estos proyectos de ley. Nos ayudan en tiempos de dificultades. Son el motor de la comunidad. Pero tenemos que seguir luchando y todavía lo podemos hacer. El liderazgo del Greater Houston Partnership todavía puede permitir una discusión y un voto para que la membresía decida si se quieren oponer a estos proyectos de ley. Todos nosotros, como ciudadanos, como residentes, podemos llamar a los líderes, asegurarse que estén oponiéndose a estos proyectos de ley. Podemos detener la opresión de los votos, pero necesitamos que todos hablen, que todos tomen una posición, especialmente los líderes de negocios. Muchas gracias.
Let me bring up Karen Padman was one of the persons instrumental in pulling together those 175 business people. Karen.
Should I leave my mask on? Hi, I'm Corinne Patman, the chair of Metro. And at Metro, we're all about access. Access to jobs, education, opportunity, our recreation, health care. And during this pandemic, the importance of public transit and access has been underlined because our ridership has fallen substantially, but still, even at the worst part of the pandemic, 100,000 were riding our system to get to jobs in the medical center, to take care of people who were sick, and for other reasons. So we're a necessary part of our community, a vital part of any burgeoning community. Access to the vote, which our mission is access, there could be no more important access than access to the vote. Not only for our communities of color, because they are disadvantaged by the provisions of these bills disproportionately, but for everybody. If you read the bills, if you just read the provisions, they're going to inconvenience everybody in Harris County. What's happened is there is a provision in the bill that for cities over 1 million, there's a different set of rules than for our smaller towns. And of course, because I grew up in a small town, all you had to do was walk down the street and cast your ballot, whereas Harris County is a burgeoning metropolis with traffic and all the other things you have to go through to vote. They're going to severely disadvantage Harris County voters, whether you're Democratic or Republican. Now again, particularly to communities of color. But the business leaders that signed the original letter with 10 signatories and then worked together when that did not have the desired result to get a meeting so that the partnership could actually vote on the issue. When that did not happen, we then moved to get a lot of signatures with the help of Seema Lajavardian and Bishop Dixon and our whole team to show that the broader business community of Harris County, and by the way, a number of the signatories on our letter are CEOs or former CEOs of very well-known big businesses. However, we also represent the broader community of all the smaller businesses that don't want their employees to have to go through this challenge, these unnecessary, burdensome challenges to vote. And you know, even our bigger corporations this last time really stepped up. I mean, they encouraged their employees to help out with the election during the pandemic and to get involved with the process. And as a result, not only did we have record turnout, I would venture to say we had record involvement with the process by these businesses. And yet, well, let me just say that overall, the business community in Harris County opposes these parts of the bill that suppress the vote. So I thank you for your time.
Let me bring up Al Castillo with LULAC 60, the president. Is Al? Yes. I called your name, right?
I did. I didn't hear you. Hello, everyone. I'm Al Castillo. I'm president of LULAC Council 60 here in Houston. Some time ago, when Governor Abbott pulled this Jim Crow tactic about the one ballot box across our huge Harris County, we sent a letter to Governor Abbott stating that this is blatant Jim Crow revisited. We haven't heard back from him, but I mean, we've expressed our displeasure and our discontent with the behavior of our reps up in Austin trying to suppress our vote. Now, this is not a typical maneuver. This is voter suppression. This is Jim Crow. This is harassment, and it's intolerable. I mean, it's really a negative situation on our beautiful and at times strained democracy, but it's our democracy, and we have to keep working toward that so we can make it better for the future. Someone said earlier about the kids. They're coming up. They're watching. And I don't really see how the governor and his crew over there don't have any remorse. They don't have a conscience. They're just looking out for themselves. And I would urge everybody that's standing in here, and all of their families and all of their cousins and uncles and brothers and sisters, to oppose this, to stand up for what's right. And that's the right to vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bishop Dixon, NAACP.
Thank you, Mayor Turner. Thank you, Judge Hidalgo, for your courageous and timely leadership on this issue, and to all of those who have assembled today as a part of this aggregation for justice and righteousness and equality. My name is Dr. James Dixon. I represent the Houston NAACP, as well as the faith community here in Houston, Texas. Today, we have to hold our heads up in spite of the temptation to hold our heads down. The fact that in Houston, Harris County, and in Texas, we are here dealing with an issue that we thought was settled when Fannie Lou Hamer marched. We thought was settled when Medgar Evers was shot in his driveway over the right to vote. We thought this issue was settled in 1965 when the Voters' Rights Act was passed. We thought this issue was settled. And yet, in 2021, we're here in Houston, Texas, Harris County, speaking up for voter rights and speaking out against voter suppression. Today, the NAACP joins the mayor, our county judge, and all of these leaders in saying to the Greater Houston Partnership and all business leaders across this region, silence is complicit. And actually, silence is a loud noise. Today, all leaders of all groups should be standing up united for a change and for a chance to say yes to equity and to justice. Judge Hidalgo, we join you in saying every elected official is being watched today. Those who are silent, when it's time for re-election, remember you were silent when it mattered. Business leaders who are silent, remember when your traffic into your restaurants and your shops and your stores gets lighter, you were silent. Now is the time to speak up, and it would be too late after the votes have been taken. Close with this. We just dealt with George Floyd, and we're still riveting from that. And all of us remember the knee on the neck of Derek Chauvin. Well, today, there's a new knee on the necks of blacks and browns, on the necks of the disabled and the poor and the disenfranchised. It's called the knee of HB 6, SB 7, the knee of voter suppression. For this would choke the life out of our communities. And we're here to say to those legislators who pushed that bill, you are taking the place of the proverbial knee on the neck. It's the knee of oppression. And we're saying we're already struggling to breathe. Please show some humanity, some decency, and show that you believe in the Constitution, that the right to vote is sacred, not to be taken away from people for personal and partisan interests. We will go public with our campaign.
All right, just two more speakers and we'll take questions. Let me bring on Mark Finkelstein of the Anti-Defamation League, and then the last speaker will be Bobby Singh. Okay, Mark.
Thank you so much, Mayor Turner. Thank you so much, Judge Hidalgo. Houston, strong community of diverse and right-thinking people, and our business community and the leaders in the business community who are supporting the effort to stop these bad bills from being passed. I'm Mark Finkelstein, a lifelong Texan and a Houston lawyer for 40 years. I'm former chair of the Anti-Defamation League in this region and current co-chair of the ADL's National Government Relations Committee. With pride, ADL works with these good folks to challenge attempts by some of Texas's elected officials to suppress access to the ballot. For example, in 2020, ADL joined with the NAACP, the Brennan Center, and others filing suit to make voting more accessible for Texans during the pandemic. Democracy depends on ensuring that every voter has an equal access and a fair opportunity to cast a ballot, free from restrictions that have a discriminatory impact, and to have each vote count. All Texans of conscience should oppose unfair limits on polling locations, restrictions on early voting, bans on drive-through voting, and voter intimidation measures contained in HB 6 and SB 7. We should also urge passage of the federal legislation designed to restore the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that has been gutted. These and other bills in this legislative session are based on wholly unsupported claims of voter fraud. If passed, these Texas laws will impose unnecessary restrictions on Texas voters and are likely to disproportionately deny fair access to members of the minority community, the disabled, the poor, and so many Texans who already struggle to have their rights recognized. Thank you, Mayor Turner. Thank you, Judge Hidalgo, for uniting us and providing us this opportunity to express opposition to these divisive and unnecessary legislative initiatives that threaten to erode democracy.
Thanks, Mark. And the last speaker will be Bobby Singh.
Good afternoon. My name is Bobby Singh, a small business owner in Harris County, the city of Houston, a Houstonian for 39 plus years, and more importantly, a naturalized citizen of this country. Mayor and Judge, the first time and the only time I became naturalized in this country, with that came the responsibility of my first vote. And I took that as sacred, because an immigrant community feels the right to vote was earned. People gave enormous sacrifices for us, to the immigrant community, to come behind and say, hey, we have a right to express at the polls. Like Reverend Dixon said, this issue has been settled. So my children ask me today, Daddy, we read this in our high school and college textbooks. It's stated. This was settled. What's this debate all about? And thus, our collective responsibility as a community to take a stand on this issue, that this is not a cut and paste. This issue has been settled a long, long time back. It shouldn't be about winners and losers. When you lose an election, we want to change the rules, Mayor. We win an election, we want to change the rules of an election. It shouldn't be about politics. It should be our right of expression to vote and let the chips fall where they may. There's no secret sauce. We should open the gateway so everybody can vote. Voter access is not a privilege, not only a privilege, but it's a right. We should take every barrier, every hurdle down to ensure the greater the participation of our constituents in this beautiful democracy, the greater the win for one and all. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. I know there are many others who would like to say something, and we appreciate them being here. Any questions to any one of us before we adjourn? Any questions?
Hi, Mayor Turner.
I'm sorry.
Hello, Judge Hidalgo. Is there a financial impact to GHP by you guys pulling out? How much money is involved here? Can you give us details?
You know, Ray Perriman spoke before us today. He said to the state of Texas by 2025, I think he put the number at about $14 billion to the state of Texas, as if House Bill 6, Senate Bill 7 were to pass.
I'm sorry, sir. I was referring to the fact that you're pulling out of the luncheon, the annual luncheon.
Oh, the luncheon. Oh, I have no idea how much they make from the table sponsorships. I know it's the state of the city, state of the county, and there are other lunches. I have no idea.
But you're hoping that's a part of the impact, right?
Well, but the reality is, I think it's important. Let me speak, and I heard the judge. This is a defining moment. Okay. It's just very, very difficult to speak before an organization that's silent on this issue. It's just very difficult to do that. You know, as a mayor, I represent the most diverse city in the United States. And what I do know is that bad things happen when good people stand down. Okay? That is what I do know. And I do know back on June the 10th, after the death of George Floyd, I signed an executive order that said to my police officers, if you see somebody doing something wrong, another police officer, you have a right to intervene. You have a duty to intervene. That's what I said to my police officers. Well, the same thing applies to the rest of us. If we see something that's wrong, if we see that HB 6 and Senate Bill 7 are denying access, voter suppression, voter intimidation bills, then we all have a right to intervene. We have a right to intervene. And so when I give my state of the city, I want to feel comfortable in the forum that I choose. Okay? I want to feel comfortable.
And
so that's the reason, you know, we think we've made the decision that we'll just seek a different host.
And I know that you have very close ties to many GHP members. What sort of personal appeals have you had, and have you been able to change anyone's mind?
Well, I want to applaud those members, those board members who have stood up. There have been a number of them who stood up and taken the lead, and Karen is in a better position to speak. She's a part of the membership.
I'd like to think that if a vote of the board had been taken on this issue, that a stand would have been taken against the bills. I'd like to think that. So I know the broader community feels that way. But I'd like to think if a vote had been taken, the board would have opposed the bills. What we were asking for was a vote.
And that's really the concern, is they're suppressing the vote on an issue about suppressing the vote. Why should organization that should stand for the people of this county have the luxury to not take a position? We don't have the luxury of not taking a position on an issue so consequential as this one. So I do commend the business leaders that are asking, hey, let's consider at least taking a position. Let's consider it. And I applaud every business leader that's speaking out. We need more of that. And that's what this is about. This is an issue that goes beyond politics, that goes beyond partisanship, that gets to the core of who we are as a country. It gets to the core of what makes our businesses successful, is they're in a democratic country. And we all have a duty to preserve that. Now, I will do everything I can to protect democracy. That's why I fought since the very moment I got into office to make voting as accessible as possible for everybody. That's why I was proud when people voted in record numbers, even though most of the races didn't turn out the way I was hoping they would. But people voted. That's the point. We all need to take a stand now. And if by saying, I don't want to speak at the dais of an institution that crumbles when push comes to shove to stand up for democracy and stand up for this county, if that moves the needle one bit, it will have been worth it, and that's why I'm here and I'm joining the mayor on this.
Judge, just following up on that first question about financial impact, the county pays $30,000 in annual dues to GHP. Do you know if there are any plans to change that, or you might ask Commissioners Court to look at that or anything like that?
We've paid the fee for the year already, so that ship has sailed. Of course, there's a financial impact to the dinner not taking place or the luncheon not taking place. I don't know what it is, but surely there was one. But that's not what this is about. It's about elevating an organization at a time where what they need to do is speak up, or at least, at the very minimum, allow a voice to their leadership so that the leadership and the membership can decide whether to speak up. That is democracy. And we have to remember there's various levels to this. This is an attack on voting, which, as we've discussed, is horrendous. It is tragic for our country, and it's happening around the country, and it will happen here if we don't stand up for it. It is voter suppression at the level of the organization, but it's also an attack on Harris County specifically. It is incumbent on leaders to defend this community. That's what they're there for. We need to have that expectation of all our leaders. When this county is attacked, its leaders stand up.
And same question for the mayor. Do you know if the city does pay any sort of annual dues to the organization, and if so, would you want to
We do,
rescind?
and we do, and I believe we've already paid it as well. But I want to stay with what the judge said. This is about, number one, acknowledging and thanking those businesses and business leaders who have stood up. I don't want to give any organization the view that they are all of that, okay? Because I want to thank the Black Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber, the Asian Chamber, the LGBTQ Chamber. I want to thank those chambers, those 175 business leaders, those 10 that are on the board who stood up. I want to acknowledge and thank those individuals who have stood up and those who are standing up. You know, every person in every organization has a choice to make. When I graduated from high school, I gave this speech entitled, "The Choice is Yours." You choose which road you want to take. So the Greater Houston Partnership, they have a choice to make. They can make their choice. And the rest of us have choices to make. And so I want to acknowledge, I want to thank those organizations, those individuals, those business leaders who are standing up to say no to HB 6 and Senate Bill 7. And I think that's what's important. I think when you choose not to lead, if you are a leader, so to speak, and you choose not to lead, you lose your status. Others will assume that role and move on down the road. So everybody has a choice to make. That organization has a choice to make. I'd rather focus now on, I want to thank Houston First. These organizations who are working to provide a forum and hosting and you know, we'll continue to work with all of the organizations in the city of Houston, you know, and you hope that people will get it and the light will turn on. But what I do know is that bad things happen when good people stand down. That I do know.
Just had one last question. have either of you heard anything from Bob Harvey or just anyone in GHP leadership in response to your decision this morning? Any word at all on whether this has moved the needle or anything like that?
I've received no word. I think people want to characterize these bills as partisan bills. I think I've spoken to that. I disagree with that characterization. I do not view these bills as partisan. I respect Republicans, respect Democrats. I think there's nothing partisan in voter intimidation, voter suppression, and restricting the access of people's right to vote.
And I'll just add, I've been in touch with the leadership and I've been in touch with a lot of the membership and had discussions about this. But I want to underscore that point is we cannot allow democracy to become a wedge issue. And for better or worse, the people who can stand in the way of that are the business community. And so they are the ones that need to remember this is a battle that was fought over which many lives were lost. It is a battle that we fight abroad. It is a battle we have to defend in our own community. And there's nothing partisan about that. And this is the moment when folks show their stripes and organizations show their stripes. It's this kind of moment on this kind of issue that, in addition to being this issue, attacks this community.
Just a quick question. Before I arrived here, I tried speaking with several business owners who did not want to comment at all, fearing that they would end up on what you would consider the wall of shame, if you will, regardless if they decide to speak out against it or for the voter suppression bills. What would you say to those business owners? And also, as far as it comes to the Greater Houston Partnership, will y'all be able to reinstate any type of business deals if they decide to have a change of heart and vote on the issue?
And I'll give a chance to the mayor also to answer this question. But look, the relationship with the business community is always there, and I join the mayor in celebrating so many that have spoken up. So, our business community, they and the workers, they are our community, and we must celebrate them. We need them to step up this time, and a lot of them are. And that's what's great, is it isn't actually that hard to come out and take a stand in opposition to voter suppression. It's not hard because it's what our democracy was built on. It's not hard because all of us studied Jim Crow. All of us saw what happened at Selma. All of us have seen the Martin Luther King speeches and what Lyndon Johnson achieved. All of us know the importance of it. But also, there is now strength in numbers. We're not even asking someone to be out there on a limb by themselves. Microsoft, American Airlines, the Anti-Defamation League. These are enormous corporations that have signed on, some of them, once the bill was passed. But, we can see very clearly through that. We just don't have the luxury to say silence is going to be the strategy. If you're silent, you're complicit. As Bishop Dixon said, if you're silent, you're complicit. There is no excuse. There is momentum behind opposing voter suppression. There are plenty of leading businesses that come out against it. There is evidence, and we've seen it with MLB, and we've seen it with the economic studies. Those who are for voter suppression are setting Texas up for a business impact, for an economic impact, for loss of jobs and for loss of business. If there is a chamber that purports to promote business in Harris County, they are, by not speaking up, they are setting Harris County up for a loss of business. And I need to remind somebody, we are in the running for the FIFA World Cup to be held in Houston, in Harris County's NRG Stadium. We are in the running against other North American cities and counties. They've already selected Mexico, the United States, and Canada, and now it's just a matter of where they're going to go. Are they going to go to a voter suppressive state that folks don't want to do business with? Or are they going to go somewhere else, the largest sporting event in the world? We can have it here. We can have it here in 2026. So the folks that are refusing to speak up are setting us up for failures in business.
And I agree, again, I agree 100% with what Judge Hidalgo just had to say, but I would also want to say, yes, we are fighting for the businesses within our city. We're fighting for the businesses within our county. We live in a competitive environment, and people are choosing where they're going to go. So we're fighting for those businesses and their expansion. But what I would also say to those businesses who are reluctant to get in the fray, what do you say to a person who want to vote, eligible to vote, and their access to the voting booth is cut off? What do you say to individuals who are attempting to vote, those who are disabled, those who may speak a different language, those who have been systematically disenfranchised for a long time, and they're in the voting booth, and some partisan poll watcher is in their face with video recording them while they're exercising a very personal and fundamental democratic right, and they're intimidated? What do you say to those persons? What do you say to that mother or that father that's working past 10 o'clock at night, and they want to, and voting opportunities have been made available to vote at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, or drive through, and they, because of their hours, they are restricted or limited? What do you say to them? What do you say to people of color who have been fighting for the right to vote in this country for a long time? What do you say to them? Okay? What about them? It's one thing to set up committees talking about racial justice and social equity and all of that. You can set up all the committees in the world. But when it comes time to giving actual meaning to that, and you shortchange it, then what have you done? We say we are diverse and we say we value it. But that means allowing that diversity in all its shapes, forms, sizes, to be able to exercise the fundamental right to vote. I can never disregard the fact I am an African American with a history of people in my own past who have fought, bled, and died for the right to vote. I don't have the luxury of being silent on this issue. I didn't get here by myself. People voted. Okay? So I don't have that luxury. And quite frankly, in this country, in this city, in this county, everybody should be standing up. Fighting for people's right to vote should not fall on the backs of blacks and browns and people who are disabled. That shouldn't just be our fight. It's everybody's fight. So, no. If it's going to happen, it should be happening over all of us standing up and saying no. And I'm not going to assume it's going to happen. But what I do know, for every action there are consequences. And people will look to have business and do business in cities and counties that recognize that diversity and value that fundamental right of people being able to vote. Okay? All right, I think we're going on long enough. Thank you so very, very much. Thank you all. Appreciate everybody being here. Thank you. Chief